Question. Do we create karma by using credit cards and taking out loans to be paid with interest? I have read in the My Lives book that in the Temple Mount, Jesus overturned the tables of the money changers because they symbolized how the fallen beings had set themselves up in privileged positions in so many ways. The book goes on to say that the modern equivalent of money changers is the financial industry that collects interest, commissions, and fees for nothing more than giving you access to the system. By the mere fact that they have their positions, you have to pay them. Well, the short answer is yes. I mean, you are tied into the system. But I would say that there are some moderations to it, in the sense that in any society, you have a certain situation and a certain culture. And even though it isn't right from a higher perspective, you can't live practically without somewhat engaging in the system. For example, it's a normal way to live to buy a house and take out a mortgage, and you are paying interest. And of course you are technically making karma because you are paying to uphold the system and reinforce the system. But it's not as severe as if you, for example, take out a credit card at a very high interest rate, or take out other consumer loans where you're paying a very high interest to get something that you possibly could live without. So I would say that it's clear that you look at any society, you look throughout history, there's always been a power elite that attempted to set themselves up in privileged positions. And in the Middle Ages in Europe, you had what's called the feudal society. And it was based on, there was a feudal lord and nobleman who owned a large piece of land. And back then, this was agricultural societies. The primary resource was agricultural land. And of course, he couldn't go out there and plow and till it and harvest. So he had these peasants that lived on the land. But they belonged to the land. The nobleman literally owned them. They were slaves of the nobleman. They were his property. And he could decide whether they could marry or whether they could move or whether this or that. They were just born into a certain station in life. And this was because these noblemen, fallen beings, had set themselves up in these privileged positions because they owned the land. And in today's world, in the democratic societies, the equivalent of this is the financial industry. Because it's clear that you look at this and there are now people or organizations, hedge funds or whatever, there are now these very small groups of people that have control over so much money that the money itself is making money for them. They are literally making money off of having money. And one of the ways they do it is, of course, giving loans where you pay interest. Another way to do it is stocks, bonds, financial instruments. So, and this, you could go into a very long discussion about this, and the Ascended Masters, especially Saint Germain, has given quite a lot of teachings about it, which you can find on my website, Ascended Master Light, and also on my Age of Higher Awareness website. So you can find a lot of teachings about this. But what the Masters are basically saying is that capitalism is not the same as a free market economy. This is the big misunderstanding in the West. That, and this is the typical example of a dualistic polarity created by the fallen beings. You had communism, which was the opposite of capitalism. But in defining it that way, you are actually defining capitalism as an economic system. But at the same time, you are trying to maintain the illusion that what we have in the West is not an economic system, it's free enterprise. It's a free market economy. But capitalism, by its very nature, does not want a free market economy. Capitalism is a system that is controlled by a small elite, and they only want to use the free market economy to gather enough money that they can control the economy. And once they have gathered that, which started happening in the 1800s in the United States, there's no free market economy anymore, only by name. Because now they have so much money that they can control the financial instruments, and thereby they control the economy. And so what Saint-Germain has basically said is that if we want to go back to a natural economy, we actually should not allow people to make money off of money. Money should be an instrument for a medium of exchange, so that you don't have to trade 15 chickens for a cow, and a short-term storage of value. But money should not be allowed to, you should not allow people to make money off of money by creating financial instruments. Doesn't mean you can't allow loans, but they should be very tightly regulated. And so basically what Saint-Germain has talked about is that we have a natural economy. And a natural economy is based on you produce a product or you provide a service, and you get paid for that. But what we have today is an unnatural economy, because on top of the natural economy is this giant financial industry that's now involving itself in everything. So that you almost can't do business without tying yourself into this financial industry. And so, I know this is getting theoretical, but what can you do then as a private person? Well, I'm not saying you should avoid ever taking a loan and paying interest, but you could attempt to minimize your exposure to it. Personally, I have never had a credit card. I have debit cards. But that's just for convenience. I don't have a credit card. I haven't for many, many years had a bank loan. So you can do whatever you can to minimize your exposure to it. Avoid taking credit cards, avoid taking consumer loans. It might require you for a couple of years to cut back on consumption until you build up a reserve, so that you don't have to take the loans and pay interest. You can just buy what you need when you need it, because you have savings, as it was called in the old days. And that means you have to go against this instant gratification. I want it now, so I pull out the plastic and buy it and pay the interest later. And it can be done to some degree. I also, if you have a retirement account, personally, I wouldn't put it in stocks or other financial instruments. I'd use the most conservative, safe investments I could find. And I wouldn't buy into all this speculation. You know, and it's not just a matter of avoiding making karma, it's also practical. Because look at the economy right now. First there was, well, if you go back to 2008, there was a financial crisis. I mean, the world financial system was this close to crashing in 2008. And if it had done so, a lot of people would have lost their retirement accounts and a lot of money they had in the financial system. Then you had the Corona crisis. Now you have the Trump crisis. I mean, where's the economy going to go in the next few years? So what Saint-Germain has actually explained is that the economy right now is what he calls a gambling economy. And he also calls it a perception economy. Because the only reason that the economy is hanging together is that people have a perception that it will keep hanging together. But that perception could shift very quickly. And if it does shift and people start selling, well, your financial instruments are not worth, your stocks are not worth the paper they're written on if nobody wants to buy them. You might have a stock today that's worth $500. But if you can't sell it it's not worth anything. And if everybody wants to sell their stocks tomorrow, then the stocks are not worth, they have no value, they have no intrinsic value. So this is because there was a time when there was a connection between the stock price and the company's performance. Now the stock price is completely detached from the company's performance. It's all a matter of what people think, how people think it will go up. If people think the stock will go up, prices go up beyond what the company's performance can support, and that's the way it is for the entire stock market. And that could crash in just about no time. So what I'm saying is, it doesn't matter of whether you want to make karma or not, but do you really want your money, whatever you have, to be tied into something that's that volatile and that could shift so quickly? Especially when you consider what the masters have said, in the next 12 years there's going to be this center of spiritual light that's going to create, it's going to flush out all the imbalances, all the hidden things, and it's going to create upheaval. This started at New Year's this year, 2025. We're now at the end of May. Just look at the amount of upheaval, uncertainty created in these 5 months. This is going to go on for 12 years. If I had money to invest, I would very seriously consider that. Not that I am an investment guru whatsoever. I know nothing about investments. I'm just saying. So there's a karmic reason to try and not tie yourself into the financial industry, and there's a practical, common sense reason for it.